Hey there, Laker fans. Welcome to another episode of Lakers Detailed. I'm your host, Vinay, with my co host, Raj. Raj, we have 4 games of the finals, NBA Finals in the books. It is a tied series, 2-2. SGA with a really great last 3-4 minutes of the game against Indiana, who looked like they were in control and were going to go up 3-1.
Yeah,
Go ice cold as a team, scoring wise. Shea helps OKC end up sealing. Chet Holmgren has a fantastic defensive last 3 minutes of the game. Gets put on an island, shuts down a bunch of guys. I thought he did a really nice job. We'll get into that a little bit later. But Raj, there's some news. The NBA offseason has started. Players are coming to agreements. Trades are being made. We'll talk about the Steven Adams signing and what that sort of means in terms of just kind of what a player of his caliber is getting in regards to that. But we're going to start talking about the Bane trade. But before we talk about the Desmond Bane trade, Sunday night, June 15th, we want to wish everybody that's listening a happy Father's Day. We hope everybody, all the dads out there, had a wonderful Father's Day weekend with your families, or if you're traveling for work or whatever. We just hope you have a wonderful Father's Day. Me and my girls, we went out. They got me some nice stuff. They got me a Nike Summer League T-shirt, which I'm definitely going to be wearing when I go to Vegas. But we went to have dinner. It was a really nice time. I always think it's nice to take a break from life and just enjoy time with your family. So I appreciate that.
100%. Out of the two of us here, you are the only one that's an actual
actual dad.
father, actual dad. Yes, so I have not reached that step in adulthood yet.
Yes.
But no, I have my grandpa with me, who's in his 90s. But we celebrated his Father's Day, which was
of
nice.
Course.
So tough to find gifts for guys up to that age. So
he's lived a very full life.
A very full life, still doing great, thank goodness. But we've gotten some nice pans and little cake from 85 degrees, which you really like. So they have the little soft cakes from there. But a great day, and hopefully everyone in the Detailed family enjoyed their Father's Day.
We hope all I hope all the detailers and the folks that listen had a great Father's Day with their families. So let's get into it, Raj. The biggest news of today: Desmond Bane gets traded to the Orlando Magic for 4 first-round picks, a swap, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Cole Anthony, who was a first-round pick himself, by the way. So conceivably, essentially, 5 first-round picks worth of talent and a swap, and then KCP is basically just filler for salary. That was a huge trade. I think that caught a lot of people off guard because A, it's still in the middle of the finals, so that trade is kind of crazy, and B, the sheer cost of the trade. The last time we saw a big trade like this was the Mikal Bridges trade that when he got sent to New York. Before that, it was the Rudy Gobert trade that happened. But Desmond Bane ends up getting sent to the Orlando Magic. The Memphis Grizzlies in the Western Conference are shifting some gears there. Yes. And I suspect there's probably going to be some more moves coming from that team because trading him for all those picks doesn't really make any sense. But give me your immediate thoughts. You've had a few hours to collect your thoughts onto this. So where are you at with what's going on here?
First, I guess I got to just accept the world that we're living in, Vinay, because on Saturday when the KD rumors came out, I was like, man, there's a 2-2 finals going on. Let's focus all of our attention on that. There's a beautiful game going on here, a beautiful series being played. And I basically got told to look at the door and get out, like just let us enjoy our rumors and all that stuff. And and today is not gonna help that at all, as we get a blockbuster deal in the league while again the finals are rolling around, which I don't believe any other sport participates in this type of coverage at all. But in any case, we have our own jobs to do. No, this is fascinating. I think it kind of shows the shift in where the league is going. Vinay, I feel like this is a direct response to the Pascal Siakam trade. Obviously not the same type of players. Mm-hmm. You can argue whether they're in the same tier or not. Siakam obviously has a little bit more proven playoff success. But in any case, Desmond Bane has had some playoff moments as well. But this is just a team in the East that feels like they're on the bubble, that one move can take them to the next step, right? And I think Indiana was kind of in this space too, a 7-6 seed, right? That was middling and got a real nice energy boost from the trade that they made and other correct pieces they've done. But Orlando's built their team for a while, and I think I've been able to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses. I like Desmond Bane a lot. I think, is he worth four first round picks? I don't
Mhm.
think that's the right question. I think that he was worth that to Orlando, and I think if you kind of really go into the details of the first rounders, they're not going to be very high picks,
Yeah,
or you can kind of look at the value of them. In any case, I love the fit there. I still think they need one more just orchestrator, kind of organizer,
sure.
but I love them going for it. In Memphis, it's interesting. You like if you follow people who cover the Grizzlies, it's kind of like, well, who's the three now for
Yeah,
Bane and for Ja and JJJ, and the whole league is starting to circle. That's what vultures do. Is kind of like, well, is JJJ available? Is Ja available? Right? When
right,
you make this
right.
type of move, it kind of sends signals that you're going in the full opposite direction. But that's kind of my first outward take, Vinay, is that it puts Orlando to me in a little bit more of a serious contention. I think they were a
Yes,
real fun young team for a while. And that's the hardest step, right? The next step of going from that fun young team, no real expectations, to now you just made a win now move. Multiple firsts, multiple good role players for a
mhm.
player you feel like is part of your star combination there. I think it's really interesting, Orlando. What were your kind of first spitballing takes on this?
Yeah. So at first I thought it was expensive. I thought that was a lot of picks to give up. But at the same time, like when Shams puts those tweets out, he just puts out 4 first round picks, so you don't know what those picks are. So I
Right.
was just like, let me just wait and see what these picks look like. And then when you start seeing the picks, it's like the 2025 pick, which is going to be kind of late. It's going to be like a 2026 Phoenix pick, which apparently they're trying to continue to be competitive. So that might not even be in the lottery either. A lot of times those picks end up being really late in the first round or maybe outside of the lottery in sort of that no man's land. That doesn't mean it can't be. You can't get a good prospect there, but those aren't really as valuable. The Mikal Bridges trade, a lot of people were like, oh, 4 first rounders is such an overpay for that guy, which to some degree is right. He's like maybe the 4th option on that team. But when you actually go look at the picks that they gave up, those first rounders are not really that valuable. So it's just
Mhm.
current extra. Did they overpay? Probably, but the actual value is there. There's this other thing, Raj, that happens, and I'm going to answer your question. I just want to make there's this other thing that NBA Twitter does, where they see that 4 first round picks and they start deliberating as to whether it was too much or if it wasn't enough.
Mm.
And I think one of the things that like we try to do at least is that you have to separate what the market value is and what the value to the team that's getting that player is. I think
Mhm.
Bane must be Orlando sees Bane as a guy who's very, very valuable to what they want to do basketball wise. And that's why they're willing to pay the premium to land a guy like that. He's on a long-term contract. He's already signed his extension. Um, it's funny because that $30 million number, $35 million number has been a very sticky number for Laker fans and like
Yeah.
Austin Reaves. And we'll talk about him because he became a topic of conversation after this trade. But
Mhm.
like now you see what that value sort of looks like. A guy like $30 million may not be a very expensive number for a guy who can score and help carry a team for stretches, when players get injured. But from basketball fit wise, I think it's a great trade.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I think Suggs is a more defensively oriented, attack the rim. He can shoot threes, but he's not like a guy who's going to shoot a ton of volume threes. Franz and Paolo, they're good all around players, that sort of thing. But Bane really gives him a stretch option. Like he gives him a guy who can pretty much hang around on the perimeter, and you can't overcommit from him because he'll knock down a ton of threes. Also, Raj, Orlando is a team that has a bunch of MFers on that team, like a lot of
Yeah.
guys that really like to scrap, and
Tough.
Bane kind of fits the personality of that team already,
Definitely.
right? He's not. It's not a. They were talking about Anthony Simons, and I was just like, well, Anthony Simons is a little bit more of like a finesse guard, but Bane is like he can shoot, but he's a tough, rugged player. So
Yeah.
from a basketball fit, I think that's great. For Memphis, I clearly they're looking to go in a different direction. Maybe they thought that Bane plus Ja wasn't good enough defensively, and so they wanted to kind of offset the responsibilities for that group. So I understand it from that point, but I think Memphis is going to do something else. I don't think they're just going to stop right there. And so I'll be very interested to see
Yeah.
what happens. But yeah, that's what I have on basketball wise for those
Yeah.
2 moves.
Yeah, me too. Again, I think it's a great offensive just kind of fit, and it's kind of what you would kind of want, right? I don't know how great Bane is on the defensive end. I do think he's like he at least tries hard, has a nice motor. I think he
Mm-hmm.
has a small wingspan, which kind of impacts how impactful he can be, right?
I say this
To this,
very nicely, but I've always seen people call him Geodude, the
yes,
Pokemon character, and
right,
it cracks me up because it's like, oh yeah, I see it. Even though
yeah.
Geodude's all arms, but it's funny.
There's this basketball archetype Vinay, of like the the weightlifting hooper,
Oh,
you know what I mean? And he
yeah,
kind of fits into
yeah.
that as well.
He just
Just
does too many bicep curls. Like,
right,
what are
yeah,
you doing
just
in the gym, bro? Just
the su-
biceps?
the super buff dude that
Yeah.
comes to hoop. But no, Bane is really good. It was funny seeing his numbers kind of pop up because he was like, man, it's 25-5 on an efficient numbers. I was like, oh, that's kind of reminds me of a different player as well. But we'll get into that a little bit later.
Divisive conversation.
What's interesting to me about this one is how much of this I was gonna ask you about. This was kind of my notes from this. How much of this is Memphis? Just like a lot of teams, I think, are going to look at the sheet this summer. It's being
Mhm.
sold as a very active trade deadline. No, it's not deadline. Excuse me. Kind of trade transaction window. How much of this is Memphis just going, we can't have three guys making 30 million plus that aren't, wherever you rank Bane or Ja and Jaren Jackson Triple J, it's just those three aren't top 10 players. Ja, I
Mhm.
think used to be, maybe he had a conversation. I think he's obviously dropped. He's almost underrated now. Some of the stuff I'm seeing about Ja, just in terms of his
I'm not
his
gonna say who said it. You already know who it is, but I'm not gonna say who said it. But I saw after the Bane trade, I saw two tweets. One that Ja's not a good player, like he's like not maybe a top 40, 50 player. I was just like, I rolled my eyes, and the other one I saw was that there's this thing that the NBA Twitter folks like to do where when one guy gets traded to the team, like the first thing to do is I'll just blow it all up now. Like, no,
yeah
who cares? Like, no reason to. You traded Desmond Bane, so you have to blow up the Memphis Grizzlies. I was like, do they have to? Like, if they get a decent player in return by flipping those picks,
yeah.
why do they have to blow it up? Like, why would any team want to do something like that? And so, sorry, that was just my aside. Like that, it's been very strange to hear some of that conversation about
Yeah.
Ja.
Well, I think most of the Jaw stuff is off the court, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like that has bled into, and look, he had a bad year.
Mm-hmm.
So did to me the player that's going to Memphis had a bad year in KCP. I can see a really rejuvenated player
Mm-hmm.
there. I thought that was a tough situation in Orlando for him. Cole Anthony has kind of been thrown to the side as a throw
Mm-hmm.
in. I like Cole Anthony. I feel like he's a fine basketball player. Maybe he didn't really fit the ethos of what Orlando was looking for, kind of looking for more defense, stuff like that. But Vinay, how much is this? To me, it's like this is I think Memphis likes Bane, and they might have been just offered an offer that they could not
Yeah.
refuse. Right? I'm sure that's a player that they thought was in the archetype. Bane was one of the few players that was consistent, really fit there. I know it's not grit and grind anymore, but kind of that style that Memphis likes. But to me, this was also a contractual thing where they looked at their sheet and went, "Yeah, we can't have three players making this much." It's tough to build a roster around
Mm-hmm.
that. How much validity, I guess, do you put to that in terms of this also being against being kind of a cause of kind of the new CBA and how tough it is to build rosters out when you have that many high salary making
Yeah.
players.
Yeah, I mean, I think the luxury tax, the second apron luxury tax, the repeater tax, and then all the restrictions that come if you hit that, or if you're over the second apron multiple times. I think that's just something that it seems like the CBA's goal wasn't to stop people from making super teams. The CBA's goal was to make it so that you couldn't make like a sustainable championship winning team. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like you see it with Boston. Obviously, the Tatum injury is very makes a completely different situation. But even prior to the Tatum injury, like it seemed as though Boston was like, no, we have to kind of move some of these guys around because it's really expensive unless you're winning championships. And then I feel like that's the same thing that you're seeing with like Memphis. Like, hey, we have to really take a look at how close to contention we are with this group and then shift gears if we have to. You saw that with Dallas. You see that technically with the Lakers with us trading away Anthony Davis. Like everybody has to make that decision. And even for OKC, I know we were talking about it in the chat. We were talking to Rome and the guys over in Coaches Den about OKC. Like right now, OKC can overpay for Isaiah Hartenstein and they can overpay for Alex Caruso and Lou Dort because Jalen, who am I thinking of? Jalen Williams and Chet
yeah,
Holmgren are on rookie scale contracts. But as soon as those guys get paid, then it becomes really expensive to keep those role players, no matter how many championships you're winning. And so when that happens, that's when the gears have to shift a little bit. And Sam Presti's a smart guy. I think he's preparing to shift gears, whatever the result is. But I'm with you, dude. I think the CBA is a lot of people hate it, and I understand why they hate it, especially if you have a team like Boston that seems to have
yeah,
like the perfect role players around their stars. But from if you're one of those folks who's always wanted the NBA to have parity, the CBA is stopping these teams from being able to stack up 5, 6 years in a row. Raj, we're gonna have 7 years in a row. We're gonna have a different NBA champion. Like
yeah.
that's pretty good parity, dude. If you ask me, so it's doing its job. If that was the goal.
Yeah, I think also some of that, I don't know if it's parody or like a lot of the stars are just hurt at the end of the year
Mhm.
as well. Some of that as well.
Fair.
There's some injury stuff, but yeah, I guess Vinay, we can kind of probably. I think you made a interesting point earlier. We can kind of get into that. I think the main conversation on the Lakers side of this is all right. What is it was very quickly moved to. Well, what can you get for our guard that looks that plays like that?
There's two guys. It was Austin that got named. Actually, it's three guys, three names I saw that got this analogy done. Austin was the first one, obviously, because we're Laker fans. We're gonna see it. Austin was the first one. Laurie Markkinen was the second one
Mm,
that was said about, and then the third one was Tyler Hero. Ironically, all three. One's a European, but all three white guys for some reason were
right.
the ones that got named. But I'd like my whole thing. Like I knew that was gonna happen. Like it's just when people. I feel like that's a regular exercise. But go ahead. I interrupted your thought. But
No. My point was like I think you made the point of I guess I don't want to compare Austin and Bane.
yeah,
That's not the point of this. And that to me, in my opinion, you can comment on this. I don't think this sets any type of market. This like feel
no,
like Orlando was in a specific situation where they
yes,
needed this exact player, and Desmond Bane fits that. And not only does he fit that, I think the overpay Vinay was they didn't have to give a single player that they felt was in their core. Right,
yeah.
KCP and Anthony are not part of their future plans. They didn't have to give up Suggs. Franz obviously was never going to be on the table, but Paolo obviously is not going to be on the table. But that's
Mhm.
kind of the three that they're really going forward with, and they didn't have to give up their center as well. Wendell Carter
Mhm.
we can get into later. But you made the point that this kind of shows you Austin's kind of value in this as well. Even when he makes Bane's at what, 37 is what I believe he's at, is already paid. But it kind of shows, right, Vinay, the value of this type of contract. A good, rotation piece. I think Bane's like a fringe all-star type player. I would put Austin in that tier as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
And I think it just shows you how valuable that piece is. When you see the kind of trade, our last pod's name was your Austin Reaves trade stink, and I think this kind of backs that up in terms of what the
Yeah.
market kind of more would be if that was the
Yeah.
case.
Hey, can I shout out somebody? I want to shout out. We've talked to him individually before. But Tony Jones of the Athletic,
Oh yeah,
he covers the Jazz. He's a Knicks fan, but people get really mad at him whenever he talks about the Jazz. But I think now he's expanded and he covers like all the Northwest division. So he like
he
does
does
the
that in the playoffs, I
yeah
believe. I think
yeah.
when's that close.
But Tony was going at it. So I follow him. Tony was going at it with a few Laker fans. I think it continued on today too as well, because there's some Austin conversation. But there's like a conversation about like Austin Reeves' value, in the Walker Kessler conversation and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to get into all that sort of stuff. The only thing I wanted to point out was, you and I have said openly, um, we've debated Austin's real value and the whole genesis behind the idea or a big core part of the last pod that we had about these Austin Reeves trades being really stinky was basically saying that you're not actually valuing Austin correctly. So you're giving him away for guys that aren't worth
Yeah,
what it is, what they're. That was the idea behind it. So, anyways, yesterday, and so one thing that we both said is if you're trading Austin at that contract, especially the contract he has now, you're basically looking at him we look at him as 2 first round picks. Like he's worth 2 first round picks. One because of his actual basketball value, and two because he's on a phenomenal contract, and you'll have
yeah,
a control of him because of that. And it was just very nice yesterday to see Tony in some of the back and forth that he was having in his commenters basically say, yeah, Austin's worth 2 first round picks. Like he's worth more than even what you guys realize. And so it's cool because he's a credentialed writer and stuff like that. So he thinks about it that way. And it was nice to read that because I was just like, okay, hopefully now that somebody else has said it with more credibility than maybe I have, like you get people understand that like if you want to trade Austin and the deal is for Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, then that's probably closer to realized value for Austin than trading Austin for
yeah,
Goga Batazde and KCP. You know what I mean? Like something like that. And so um I I don't know what to make of that, Raj. Like I do think that if you take the category of players who won't ever make an all-star game because they're just not splashy enough players,
sure,
but who can produce to a near all-star level,
yeah,
I think Austin fits in those categories.
me
And
too.
we always use that example of Jamal Murray because Jamal Murray is a really great guard, but he just can't break into the all-star levels because there's just so many great guards in the West and in the East.
Yeah,
And so, you know, Is it 2 first round picks? Is it more than 2 first round picks? Is it, whatever it is? But I'd be very curious to see what he thinks. What do you think Austin thinks his number is? What do you think he should be compensated? Like, he's going to ask for a max. So, like, we know every agent saying you ask for the top and then you negotiate down. What is Austin's true number? Not the number that you'd be happy with, but the true number based on like where you put him right.
Yeah. What's interesting is like there's a whole nother season to go, right? We're both predicting that he's most likely going to just decline the extension that they'll offer. I think it's like 490 or whatever it is this summer. So then there's a whole nother season left of he's improved every year. I think 30 to 35 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
For now. But I mean, next summer the Lakers are, and this is why I think Austin is doing this, because next summer the Lakers are even more. He has even more leverage. He can just absolutely walk out the door. So that number is wherever he needs it to be, and it always just takes one, right? Vinay is kind of it's the favorite term of an agent. It's the favorite term of a player when they're going into the payment situation. Only takes one team to go, here's X, 40. Here's this. Here's whatever we want to do. And now Austin go back to the Lakers and go, all right, this is my number, right? That's part of why the guy that's playing in the finals right now is not on the Lakers. He went and got a number that was more than the Lakers thought that he was valued at, which they were wrong about. But in any case, that's the reason he's not on the team. There was no restricted agency there. But that's kind of where I think it is. And the players that you just mentioned, right? The fringe all-star. That's a tough like player to kind of point out in the league, right? That can be the 3 or 2, but really like they can't be your best player on your team. You're probably not,
100%,
you know what I mean? Right. And so that's a tough player to scout and find and trade for, because the team that is harboring that player also probably needs that level of player as well. Right. So like people are, so this is an interesting conversation today. Darius Soriano of the LFR pod pointed something out. I wanted to have this conversation here because I think this is fascinating. He mentioned how I think Jimmy Butler and I forgot the other star. I think he mentioned Jimmy Butler, Damian Lillard, and one more star player went for, I believe, and Luka Doncic went for 3 combined first round picks. Right. These are all star level players when they were moved. Dame has regressed, but in any case, Dame, when he was traded to Milwaukee, was a star type player. Jimmy Butler, you can question his star status, but in any case, big name player. And obviously Luka Doncic, we know. There's some other context of who the players were involved in that, but in any case, but Mikal Bridges, and the trade we saw today went for like 8 and 9 first round picks. I think the reasoning for that to me is, one, the leverage is the team that's holding the fringe all-star player probably is like in more of a position of wanting to keep that player. That player is probably less on the market. Yeah. Strangely, this doesn't work logically, but the star player has probably already asked out, and there was already a bridge burned where the star needs to leave. Is that kind of interesting though? Where like role players are not role players, like fringe all-star role players are going for more capital than stars. I just think that's an interesting place we're at the league, and I think that connects to your CBA kind of point where it's hard to stack these big contract players, multiple on a team to where you have all this player movement now. And I think that's why you're seeing when teams need that extra last piece, they really funnel over everything to go get it. That's why you see the Knicks do it. You just saw the
Orlando. Orlando sees him as the last piece. I'm with you, dude. Like, even if you take a step back, even before the Knicks, like when Boston traded for Drew, traded for Drew Holiday, Drew was considered a guy who was overpaid for his position because he wasn't putting up like gaudy offensive stats. Even Derek White, to some degree, was considered a guy who was maybe overpaid because he was in San Antonio, not really producing. But again, he lands in a position where his role is much more fitting with the stars and the purpose, the style of basketball they want to play. So I'll say this: I think 2 things are happening. Okay, in regards to Darius's point, I think there's 2 things that are happening. I think one, when you get a star player who's over $50 million, it's just really hard to trade them. That salary amount is incredibly big, and it's hard to go 1-to-1. I think you're seeing this issue with Kevin Durant right now because even though he's older in age, his salary is really, really high. So to get to what he has to go, you have to have like a $30 million player and a $20 million player, right? So like, what are they rumoring to send, right? You're seeing San Antonio offer like 3 guys that are basically around $25 to $30 million a year. You're seeing Houston offer Jalen Green, who's like at 30 something million dollars, and then like Jabari, who's like at 13 million. Like you're seeing like them a big salary that takes up like 60-70%, and then another salary which is like a young prospect. I think when you have a guy that's a salary that's that big, Jimmy Butler size salary, it's just really hard to trade for that player. So teams are less interested in offering the compensation because you're going to end up having to send somebody like 1-to-1. Like we sent Anthony Davis out, right? And that's basically a 1-to-1 trade for Luka Doncic. They just said, look, Luka's younger, obviously better than Anthony Davis in terms of ranks. You got to send us more than just Anthony Davis for him. So max in the first round to go. I think that's one thing that's happening. The other thing that I think is happening is actually something that we discussed when this OKC series started, which is, are we seeing a shift in the NBA where the weight of having superstars on your team isn't as influential to winning championships as it is having high level role players on your team? And so you get teams like Orlando, teams like Boston, teams like the Knicks, who identify who their star guys are, who are the two bucket getters on our team that are going to carry us to a championship. And if we can land them for cheap, if we can land them Jalen Brunson in free agency for $25 million a year, if we can draft him, Boston drafts Jalen and Tatum, Orlando drafts Franz and Paolo. If we can draft him, then we're willing to overpay with our assets to go get those high-level guys, role players, everything. I think that's the phenomenon that's happening right now. And the really good teams are the ones that find the right guys and they put it all together.
Why do you think in a basketball sense that's happening? Like, why do you like what's changed, I guess, over the years? Like my theory, I guess, Renee, on this, right? Because basketball, obviously the game has changed, but the idea that role players matter isn't some new concept, right? It's always been the Derek Fishers, the Robert Ory's, right? The Lamar Odoms, all that mattered. But what's seeming, to your point, is that stars matter. Like the combination of putting two stars together doesn't raise your margin as high as it used to. And my theory on that is I think the talent in the league has just raised, exponentially to where there are still superstars, but the gap from, I guess, the 7th best player in the league to the 20th is just not what it was 15, 20 years ago, where even 10, like, we're getting old. Whenever the Miami, the big three formed, right? That big three of LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, wherever you ranked Wade at that time, the gap from Wade to like the 10th, 11th best player was still like a pretty sizable gap. Now, I'm not going to go to whoever, Wade is in the current league, but it just, you look top to 10, like where is Donovan Mitchell ranked? I have no idea. But the combination of Mitchell and that Cavs team, they were really good in the regular season, but the talent threshold in the playoffs just does not jump out. Do you agree with my theory? That's what I think it is. It's just the stars aren't as separated from where they were before.
So not only are the stars not separated as much, I think positionally you're seeing teams that are consistently bad end up having high draft picks, and the players that they have to keep drafting that are like the best player available end up playing the positions of the guys that they already have in that position, right? So I'm taking a look at the 2024 draft right now because I think this is actually a good example. This is a fun exercise. This is a good example. Like you could look at the teams, like, so the Hawks draft Reaves, right? The kid out of France. Young kid. He's pretty good. I've watched him play. I've watched.
You were high on him.
Games.
Well,
we liked him. We're all like, yo, this guy's
best.
already got a great feel for the game. Like it's only a matter of time till he's. So you look at the Hawks. The Hawks had DeAndre Hunter in that position, a guy that looked great coming out of college. And they've just traded him at the deadline, but he's a guy who's paid $20 million a year. The Cavs identified him as a guy that might help them go over the top in the 6-man role. Obviously, they get knocked out. Yeah, they get knocked out early, but he plays well for them. But the Hawks look at him, Reaves, and they go, okay, well, we had DeAndre Hunter here for so long, but this kid's also really good, so we have to move him. I think that kind of stuff is happening now too as well. I could scroll down even further. Like, let's go to he hasn't played yet, or much yet. But look at the Rockets. The Rockets at number 3, they grabbed Reed Shepherd out of Kentucky. Reed hasn't played much at all.
No.
And you see the Jalen Green conversations coming out now. Like, oh, is he is he a
Rockets
guy?
fans love him, by the way.
Reed?
Really high on him.
Yeah. I know I think we watched a game. We watched one of his games. I remember watching one of his games in
In
summer
summer
league.
league. Yeah,
Yeah.
he killed us. Yes.
Yeah. And so again, a guy who's in the same position as a guy that they've already paid and just paid too on
Yeah.
top of that. Reed Shepherd. And I'll give you one last example. The Trailblazers draft Donovan Clingan. They traded for DeAndre Ayton. They had him at center. They still drafted Donovan Clingan. And my thing is, this is not to say that any of the incumbent players are not good, but there's this thing that's happening in the NBA where the talent that's coming into the league is also really good. And if you have a guy who can be an impact guy from day one, like any of those three guys, Reed, we still don't know yet because he hasn't gotten it. But even if I go down the list a little bit more, the 76ers at 16 drafted Jared McCain. He came on the scene and he was putting up 30 a night for the Sixers when they were all depleted. So it's like you have guys like this that are coming in and can be impactful immediately. And that doesn't mean you necessarily go to being a superstar or contention, but now you're pressed, right? Like if you're a GM and you have Jalen Green on your team, if you're the Rockets GM, and you have a kid in Reed Shepherd who looks like he might be as good, if not better, or maybe do the things that Jalen doesn't do as well, better than him. Do you take the gamble of sending Jalen Green for Kevin Durant and see if Reed's the guy that can help fill some of the holes there and that sort of thing? So I think it's super interesting to see that happen. I think that is one of the things that's happening. So the extra premium that people are paying for the players that they're paying it for are the guys that they believe are like high level veteran role players that can push them over the top. The Drew Holidays, those type of guys. And I think moving forward for teams that have the established star guys, whether they're on rookie scale contracts or they get them in free agency, whatever, or via trade, I think you're going to see them overpay for like really high level role players that they believe that can take them over the top. And honestly, Roger, I think that's just the gamble. Back in the day, the gamble was a whole bunch of picks for Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Maybe now it's a whole bunch of picks for Desmond Bane, and he's the difference between you winning and or making it to the finals and not making it to the finals.
That's a great point about how much more ready players are to come in and contribute now. And your point with DeAndre Hunter, good player, right? Maybe 8-9 years ago, he's a guy that the Hawks are like, no, we're not moving him.
Yeah.
But to your point, I mean, the margins are so thin now that going from his contract, whatever he was at, 490 or something like that, to Reaves, who I'm looking at his contract, is on a 4-year 50, deal, like just
like $10
really,
million a year,
so really like edits the way you're able to kind of maneuver roster wise. And you just look at the finals, right? Andrew Nembhard still on his rookie deal, I believe, right, Vinay? Like just starting and being one of the best players in the playoffs. Obviously, they have Halburn who's paid, but Aaron Nesmith, I believe, is still not paid or is on a pretty.
He's a decent contract. I think he's in the tens, the teens.
Okay,
millions,
yeah. But OKC, right? Jalen Williams, rookie deal. Chet, rookie deal, right? Shea's obviously on his max, but Cason Wallace, rookie deal. And to your point, the only guys that are really paid besides their superstar is Alex Caruso, just got a 480 extension, and Isaiah Hartenstein, who's making, I think, 25 or 27, and that's it. That's the team that they're going with. That's why the game Saturday was so fascinating, because 3-1, 2-2 probably decides a lot of those young players' future in OKC. Absolutely. Right. So winning that game extended kind of those contracts' lives as well. But yeah, super interesting that, you think that, the conversation was, oh man, the new CBA is going to kill these mid-level players. And really it overpaid those mid-level players. But everyone else is kind of hurting, right? You're either a minimum or you're a very high well-paid role player. The in between game from there is really tough. So this is all.
I think I was gonna say, I think it's forcing teams to really evaluate role players and not waste money on guys that are not great role players. And the other thing, the unintended, or maybe it's intended, unintended, is the guys that are rookies that come in that are not impact rookies by year 4. They're going to be out the league way faster than you realize, unless they land on a team that could really use them. I think that's a real danger, because I feel like we're seeing a lot of guys who are year 3 and kind of haven't really popped off, or we're just kind of middling in terms of their impact, and then they get moved, like they get
Yeah.
used as like salary filler or like as first round prospect sort of thing. So
No, for sure. Yeah, this just readiness to be able to play. Someone in the chat was asking if Dalton is like, a poor man's Desmond Bane. I think he has a long way to go with that. But the amount of time you have to prove it, Vinay, is kind of less and less
yes,
right now. Like Dalton's already getting like, oh man, should we be traded? I remember growing up, like rookies. Obviously, you had the star rookies, but like usually there was not a lot of contribution right away. There
yeah.
was
The
usually
expectation wasn't there unless you were like a top 5 pick. There was
right.
no expectation for a lottery guy after pick number 7 or 8 to be like
Yeah.
he's going to change our franchise.
Yeah, and that's what makes the Reed Shepard thing so interesting because they just kind of shoved him in the G League and said
Yeah,
you stay there, and he probably had a little bit more talent that he could show. But no, this is super interesting, and I think that makes the Lakers summer very interesting as well.
absolutely.
How they kind of evaluate and what players to go to. This isn't a dig at anyone doing this. It's just when I see the Luke Cornett and stuff trades, it's just like these dudes who play like 15 minutes a game. It reminds me so much, many of the Mozgov summer where like
Oh yeah.
because Mozgov caught a few dunks from LeBron James in games that he really had zero meaningful plays in, but he was 7 foot, can catch some lobs. We went and threw him a 4-year, $64 million deal.
Yeah.
People hate the Luol Deng one. I as a fan at that time was not as upset at the Luol Deng because I thought Luol at least fit some veteran culture.
Yeah,
And
he was like looked at as like a tween wing defender type of guy. He wasn't
Pat Riley
like a bad
obviously
player. Yeah.
Pat Riley obviously knew some things that was not sharing with his former Laker brethrens. But yeah, it just reminds me of the Mozgov stuff, which like just connected through all this. You can't have that many bad contracts on
Yes.
your roster and expect to win. The Lakers went to the playoffs with like 5 players they deemed playable. Vando's interesting in this. Obviously, Gabe is interesting in this. Maxi Kleber as well. Shake
Yes.
Milton. All these contracts Vinay of unplayable dudes. And you look at the finals. OKC and Indiana going 11, 12 deep. Not a lot of fluff room for your roster. So but very interesting.
So Raj, so it's been fascinating. The Desmond Bane trade. A lot of people feel like it's a market setting trade. I don't think it is. I think it's just one of those. It's like the Mikal Bridges trade, where this one team really really wanted that guy, so they traded for that guy. And so it's very hyper specific to him. And so moving on, did you have any other like kind of last thoughts or any other thoughts about the Bane trade?
No,
basketball wise or anything? No. Okay.
No, not really. I think that was an interesting trade and kind of
Yeah.
kick off the trade season. I don't
Yeah.
remember
No.
a trade
Absolutely.
made during the finals of this magnitude. I don't remember. I don't think there's been one. Yeah.
I mean, I was literally talking in the Discord, in the Lakers detail Discord, and I was just like, yeah, I don't think you'll see a trade until like the options actually get exercised, which is like in 2 weeks. But these guys, I mean, technically they're agreements, so the deal might not happen until July 1st. Like at the
No, this deal happened already.
like
this
they're consummating it immediately.
Yeah, the Orlando and Memphis already tweeted out their thank yous.
Oh, okay. All right.
Welcome.
Well, they did in this season then. Yeah. So like maybe that's one of those unintended consequences of the CBA where like teams, they'll that small window of time during the finals and the draft, they'll make their moves before the fiscal calendar year flips over when it does that. Before we go to the next topic, because we're still on this topic of the Magic, I want to reintroduce this idea of going after Wendell Carter Jr. It is something that I proposed to you, I want to say like a month back. I know you and I have talked about it on this pod. We have also, I know we've talked to the coaches and the coaches over there when we go and participate with them and stuff. We've discussed it with them, and they've done, they've watched tape on him and covered him. So that's always a good time too as well. But like this is, if you look at their cap sheet now moving forward for Orlando, Paolo's extension isn't going to kick in next year. It's going to kick in the year after that. He's going to get a max extension. It's going to be 30%, whatever it's going to be. And so I think if you are trying to see if you can snag a guy like Wendell Carter Jr. away from Orlando, because they're probably looking at their cap sheet and saying, yeah, we're not interested in paying like 30, 40, $50 million. They're not a team that, there's teams out there like the Miami Heat are a team that does not like to pay a luxury tax like ever. And so Orlando might be one of those teams that's like that. And Wendell's probably like fifth but he's going to be getting paid like close to 18, 19, 20 million a year starting not this coming season, but the following season. If you could snag him away now for not a lot, might be a guy that's worth looking at. Do you think in your mind that's a guy that maybe we should try? My proposal has been, Raj, because he's only making about 10 million a year.
Yeah.
Offer them Dalton, offer them an expiring so they can get out of his contract, Wendell's contract, and they get a first round pick guy back. Do you
Yeah.
think that's too much? Do you think that's reasonable for a guy like Wendell?
I think that's reasonable. We were having this discussion offline. My only wondering on this, just pondering is Orlando just made a win now move. They obviously feel next year is a open year, whether that's due to the Celtics injuries, whether Cleveland doesn't look as powerful in a playoff setting, whether Indiana's Cinderella run, kind of gives you obviously Cinderella being, I'm not trying to make fun of their run, but just gives them some confidence that they can make a run themselves. Obviously push Boston the way that they did. Why, I guess, go down in talent for a salary, for purely salary motivations. I'm not disagreeing with you that they're going to have some tough decisions.
Fair.
Yeah. And I just think there's other places that they would do that. Again, Goga to me also fits in this mythical kind of creature type centers that you have to really have some. Not saying his advanced numbers are great. You have to get a lot of imagination to fit that on a contending team in high minutes, high roles. But in any case, I think Orlando has other players they would like to first. But hey, if they take Dalton, and a first, then I would happily do that. I think Wendell fits a lot of the boxes that you want to fit this summer of guys under like 28. 27, proven defensively, can catch lobs, pick and roll partners, has had winning success in some form with Orlando. So I would like it. I can't see them going into a negative talent move, but yeah, it's definitely a guy I'd like to go at for sure.
Yeah. So for me, it's just one of those things where I was like, I wonder if their GM is trying to look forward and be like, okay, I need to get ahead of Paolo's extension because I don't want to be in a situation where teams have me over the barrel because they know I don't want to pay luxury tax, that sort of thing.
Sure.
So, some teams do that. Some teams don't do that. But, I would, if I was the Lakers, I'd at least call and just say, you guys interested in moving this guy? He never hurts to do that.
It would be a little painful to watch Dalton in just like the perfect situation just for.
See, that's my thing, Raj. Like they probably need shooting now that Cole Anthony's gone. And like, if let's say they say you offer them Dalton and Gabe Vincent, right? Because they don't really have a backup point guard now anymore because Cole's gone.
They don't really have a starting point guard. To be honest,
I mean,
but
they have Anthony. They have Anthony Black, who's really good.
Yeah, you're right.
But they use him sort of like as a combo guard because he's not really a shooting guy.
Yeah.
But Gabe gives them a veteran guy off the bench if they need one. Dalton's a shooter, decent athlete, can play in their style of basketball. So I could, if I was a GM trying to pitch it to them, if they say, yeah, we're interested in Dalton, that's kind of how I would try to pitch it to them. I don't know if they would take it, but that's the way I would pitch it to them.
But great would be a great fit. Just it would protect Dalton defensively and let him kind of be a gunner. He doesn't have to shot create at all. Not saying he has to do that here, but Paolo and Franz kind of take a lot of that on their shoulders. So yeah, would be
So that's the big trade. It was very interesting to see it go down. The timing, the premium, everything that was involved with it was very interesting to see. Which brings us to the other transaction that Laker fans were deeply invested in, which is Steven Adams basically re-signing with the Houston Rockets for essentially what was the non-taxpayer MLE, which is about $12 to $13 million. That is the amount of money that it's going to cost to get sort of like an impact guy. Like Steven Adams, I can argue, is a borderline starter in the NBA as a center, and he's basically playing off the bench for Houston. He was like very impactful for Houston in the Warrior series up until Buddy Hield caught fire in Game 7.
Can I ask you a quick, just super quick hitter? Does he get that contract if Houston, I guess, misses the playoffs, or obviously they had a good seed, but if he didn't have the series against Golden State, is that still the contract he receives?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he gets that. I think it's just one of those things where they kind of unearthed value of him in the middle of a playoff series. Like they might have been like, we like Steven Adams and we really want to bring him back. and then they watch how impactful he could be in the role that he was being played in,
Mm,
and they're like, "Oh no, we really we really got to hold on to this guy,
this is a
and as
fair
long as
point.
it's not an unreasonable cost, we'll hold him."
No, for sure. I think you're right in that. I just find that interesting because I think Steven Adams played a lot less than people realize this season, right? It feels,
Mm-hmm.
even in my own head, obviously I don't follow Houston as closely as obviously people who live there and all that, but Steven Adams, Vinay, played 14 minutes a game, right? I mean, 14 minutes a game, played 57 games, had some injuries and all that, but 14 minutes a game, backup center. The price is the MLE. Like
That's a lot.
that's not nothing. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying Steven Adams is a bad player. I'm not saying he's not impactful, but I do think like if Steven Adams is your starting center, you're probably having a little bit rough issues. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's very effective in what he does. There's not a lot of crazy versatility within that, but yeah, just you were making a point. You were kind of setting the conversation up. I found that interesting.
Yeah. So, basically, what I was going to talk about was just the transaction itself. He basically got paid the non-taxpayer MLE. He is a guy that the Laker fans, including yourself and I, were looking at as a guy who might be like a $6 million taxpayer MLE target. That would be kind of
Yeah,
what his market value was. Would the Lakers be able to pry him away? I didn't think that was going to be possible, but because most times people just don't leave unless another team really, really doesn't want them to, and then it's about just giving yourself an opportunity to make more money in the future. But he got paid. He got paid double the taxpayer MLE, so good for him. But that's a guy that we scratch off the kind of board that we have of guys that we could probably use as a backup center.
hmm
I don't think we had any grand delusions of him being like the starting center for the Lakers.
sure.
I think he's kind of up there in age now too a little bit. He it does like to wrestle in the paint, so it can lead to injuries and whatnot. Um, but you can scratch him off the list for now, especially with the extension sign. We still need that type of guy, though, right? Like preferably
Yeah.
off the bench, I would imagine. Like that's
hmm
that's the prototypical guy that you want. So that means that it leaves guys like if you're going to try in free agency, you're looking at a guy like Clint Capella, somebody who's a little bit older but still physically kind of stout, rugged, has a lot of veteran
Sure.
experience playing that role. Um, do we need to continue looking for that archetype for the backup big?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like if you look at the names available, in my opinion, Vinay, we're not really in a position to, I don't know, look at the available bin and then pick from there.
Mm-hmm.
Like this isn't they're not coming to us. 29 other teams have access to all these centers and we'll be bidding for them. So this is where I think this is different from the Bane contract, Vinay, where
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this does set a little bit more precedent
Yes.
of what the market is, right? And to me, Houston paid a little bit in years, maybe because just to not just for not allowing Adams to get to free agency, they
Yeah.
probably offered the extra year, right? Now is my assumption. Obviously, I'm not in the conversations, but this to me, if I'm Clint Capella, if I'm whatever the bigs that are available, I'm going, oh, Steven Adams, 14 minutes a game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I'm those agents, I'm going. King Capella. By the way, I make this point in our chats, and I get kind of thrown out for this, but I do think this matters. Clint Capella is making what, Vinay, $20 million a year
He
right now.
was. Yeah. That was his last
Okay,
contract. Yeah.
usually the drop isn't 20 to minimum player. That's just not how the
True.
NBA works, right? It's just I remember when forgive me, but I remember when DeMar DeRozan was available. People, DeMar DeRozan for the
Oh,
MLE.
that
I
was
was
such
like,
a good time. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, DeMar DeRozan's not coming for the MLE. Are y'all in? Like, he's making $35 million, and then the
Yeah.
Kings or the Bulls, I forgot who went and paid
Yeah.
him $30 million a year. I'm not comparing these players to DeMar DeRozan, but yeah, if I'm Clint Capella, I'm going taxpayer MLE. Like, what? Like,
Yep.
so that's am I wrong for that? Like, that's how I kind of feel the big man free agent class
Mhm.
is, where I do think trades are a little bit more. You can go and get like Nick Claxton's been the name that that's
Mhm.
almost plaster, should be plastered on the wall behind me because that's the name that we talk about every other day now. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think these free agent bigs, I think you get very in dangerous territory after Capella. It gets very close to the I always forget his name, the guy in Boston, Tony Cornette,
Luke
Cornette,
Cornett.
Luke Cornette, excuse me,
Yeah.
Luke Cornette, and those type of centers, who you're really going off of a very small basketball sample. So, but yeah, but am I wrong for that? For thinking this sets a precedent in a market for this specific type of archetype, which is, I think we're in a copycat league, and if you're watching the playoffs, bigs have mattered a lot
Yes.
more than they used to, right? They've been very important in pretty much every successful team. Minnesota's is going to have bigs next. Well, we'll see. We can talk about that, but all these other kind of teams going with a lot of centers and center depth. I think the Steven Adams kind of kicks off that people should be kind of evaluating how cheap, I guess, you can get these type of playable centers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing it should also allow people to understand is that there's a good chance that the team that that player is already on is going to be the team that he ends up with at the end of free agency too as well. So like, I know Laker fans have been like, oh, we want Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But there's also a good chance that Minnesota just keeps Nickeil Alexander-Walker because the market out there in terms of free agent cap space, there's not that many teams with cap space. There's not that many teams that are willing to also hard cap themselves at the first apron for Nickeil Alexander-Walker by offering him the entire non-taxpayer MLE. So that's also something that's out there too as well. So it's going to be interesting to see just kind of Jose, I saw this. You started, but this Trey Jameson is a Steven Adams type player. Trey Jameson, another guy who seems to be another guy who looks like who works out in the gym a lot, and then they're like, "What are you working out for, dude? Like, we gotta work on the basketball stuff a little bit more."
That Steven Adams should be his Michael Jordan. Like, he should look at Steven Adams and go, "That's the path, right? Screen hard, offensive rebound. Don't need very many offensive skills, and I can get paid. 3-year, 39, Vinay, for Steven Adams. That it's not cheap, especially the way teams are handing out large deals. I think it's important. It'll have some impact this summer.
But he knows what gets him paid. Like, he's openly come out and said that my job. He said it. I think he did a presser once where he talked about Russ playing with Russ and then playing with Ja and then now playing with like Jalen Green. I think where he basically said, or it might have been about Amen Thompson. He basically, it's my job to protect those guys. He's like, it's my job to protect Russ. It's my job to protect Ja. So you're not going to put your hands on him. You're not going to be able to, defend them the way that you want to. And I mean, there is a need for players like that in the league, especially in the league that does a lot of pick and roll. Raj, it's just one of those things. Now we have Luka on the team.
Yeah,
we're gonna be running a lot of pick and roll, dude. That's the kind of basketball he likes to play.
You need a budget for goons. Is that what you're saying?
You need a goon budget, bro.
A goon budget.
You need a budget for goons. Oh, okay. All right. So the Adams thing is clearly, a guy that we had on our list. But I think if the Bane trade wasn't a market-setting trade, I think the Adams signing is a market-setting signing for, a guy who's maybe like a borderline starter in free agency. How much is it going to cost to get him? I think you're basically looking at non-taxpayer Emily. So for basically guys like that, I think maybe Laker fans have to kind of temper their expectations a little bit. If you're trying to see if you can grab a sixth-man guy, like a really quality sixth-man guy, or a guy that you think can be a six-man guy, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which is what a lot of people think, it's going to cost you $13 million. You're not getting him for the taxpayer MLE. And I know he's a guy that's been kind of linked to that specific amount of money for quite a while. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of happens with that. I want to ask you a question, Raj. There are teams that are going to be running into different situations. So there's a thing that I posted the other day where I said that if the Lakers are smart, if I was the Lakers, if I was an assistant GM, you and I are assistant GMs, Rob calls us into a meeting and he says, okay, what types of teams should we be looking at right now on June 15th that we should be targeting? One of the suggestions that I had was that the Lakers should be looking at teams very closely to see who they draft, to see if they end up drafting a guy that they really like, but already have a guy that's already in that specific role, and be very, very quick about trying to trade for those guys. So, for example, I think the Brooklyn Nets have like the 8th pick. They have like a top 10 pick. There's a chance that Duke center, Maluak, might end up in Brooklyn. Not saying he is going to, but he might end up in Brooklyn.
Sure.
Just because he's like the best player available. at that point, a guy like Nick Claxton might not necessarily be somebody who's in the cards for them. In terms of aggression,
Yeah.
how aggressive would you want the Lakers to be? You want them to be really aggressive in going after your team? Like the Jazz have been also rumored to land Malawak, which is why
Yeah.
there's been this rumor that like Kessler might suddenly become available. Do we
Sure.
need to? Can we wait it out, or do we have to go after those guys as
Yeah.
soon as possible?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could wait it out. I hope there would be some intel behind the scenes of who is actually available, right? And but no, I've seen you point that idea out. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Tony Jones also mentioned that, if Jazz do get Malawak, then the Lakers should be ecstatic in terms of, I guess, the price for Kessler would drop a little bit. I'm
We would hope
guessing
so.
because of
Yeah.
how available he would be. How much more tradable he would be. I think that's a good point. We'll see, where, all these draft picks end up. But I think that's why a lot of teams wait till after the draft. That's kind of the draft is usually where a lot of the, influx happens. It's where teams can kind of evaluate, okay, this player's coming in to take this guy's position. Now I can move this player, and all that type of stuff happens at the draft. I think the Lakers should be wise to look. I don't think you have to be in desperation mode. But the Lakers, I mean, their offer doesn't change much, right? Like they don't have a high draft pick, so the player that they're picking isn't really is not going to change a lot of their fortunes. But I think they need to be aggressive for sure. I think there's players to be had. I think there's players to be available because again, I just think Vinay relying on free agency for this position is extremely difficult. Like you go through the names and most of them are going to stay with their former team. After that, it gets very dark. Like Brook Lopez, I'm less high on him just because of the age, but Capella, Miles Turner staying, Naz Reid is staying. Then you get to the Mo Wagner, Al Horford, Kevon Looney. Like these are, I guess, household names that
Mhm.
might, I guess, take your non-taxpayer MLE. But I think this center position should be one where they're super aggressive and try to go get the young talent that they sought after. If it's Kessler, if it's Willie, Wendell Carter Jr., if it's Nick Claxton, hopefully you go and get these done. Also, I think what is important, Vinay, is have this done maybe before free agency starts, so you know
Yes.
where also you want to be building, right?
Yeah.
I think that was one of the issues for the Lakers in previous times where they thought maybe they could trade D'Angelo Russell and they went and got Gabe Minson, and now they have three guards that
And
doesn't really
then we
make
had to wait for 3
yeah,
months for them to
yeah,
figure out when they're going to trade him. Yeah.
yeah. So that's
Um,
kind of where I'd be at.
Yeah. So the reason why I bring that question up is because I'm looking at the draft board, right? And so picks 6 through 10 are
Yeah.
the Wizards, the Pelicans, the Nets, the Raptors, the
Mm,
Rockets. That's 6 through
mm,
10. After that, you've got the Blazers, the Bulls, the Hawks, and then the Spurs have a second pick and whatnot. So if you look at trade at the spots from 6 to 12. Chat, you guys can't see this because I'm looking at this off screen. If you're looking at 6 to 12, maybe 6 to 13, there's about 7 different teams there, Raj, that most likely are going to draft a guy that they probably like more than the guy that they have in the position, right? So even a team like Atlanta that has the 13th pick, like the guy that's mocked to go there, I'm looking at Tankathon, is Asa Newell, the guy from Georgia, the power forward from Georgia, but they have Jalen Johnson. Like they're not playing Asa Newell over at Jalen Johnson.
no.
They have Onyeka playing center for them. Like, unless they plan on doing that, like you're running into a situation where Atlanta might have too many guys. And maybe if they do like the guy that they draft, they're willing to move one of the guys they already have on the team. So I think personally for me, like there's in terms of the near future, if the Lakers aren't actively working on trades or whatever it is, the way Orlando and Memphis were, this is like that target area. Like this is like
Mm,
look at the teams that are looking around. Is Brooklyn going to draft a center? Are they not going to draft a center? Toronto who are they going to draft because they have so many wings? Is there somebody that they want to make available? That sort of thing. That's one of those teams that's in the
yeah.
buckets that I think the Lakers have like a real opportunity to try and target. So I'm hoping that we're active on that end. I'm not going to hold my breath because we typically haven't been. But
Yeah.
if there was a season to try and jump on a trade before the market values get up and down a little too crazy, I feel like that this season would be the best season to do that. Is that fair? Is that a fair way to
Yeah,
say it? Like,
yeah, I think that's fair. One thing I was also, kind of considering. I'm not a draft person, so I have no idea. Yeah, I couldn't name 6 people in this draft if you
oh,
forced me to.
fair.
But I'm just wondering if the draft would be just, again, I'm seeing a lot of young players contribute. If you can go get a 4-year center to kind of fill this. I think Denver tried to do this last year, but I'm blanking on the name who of the guy that sprained
Durant
his.
Holmes.
Yeah, John Holmes, who I believe they really hoped for to be
Yeah.
like their backup center or forward, whatever he was.
Mhm.
And then he got hurt, and it kind of messed with their plans in terms of who they'd have to play. I wouldn't be mad at that route either, Vinay. I trust the scouting department to go and
Mhm.
find. And it's rough because like you can talk all the talk you want, and once you get to the position, many teams just pick the best player. They
Available. Yeah.
forget position, and you can get in trouble, or you can, sometimes it can work out. But a lot of times teams will just pick the best player at the draft position, no matter what, whether
Mhm.
it's a point guard or whether it's a guard over, even if your team has 8 point guards on it, they'll still go get the point guard that, they believe is better than in that position. So, but I'd love the draft also to be a place. I think we have the 55th pick, same one from a year ago. But I would love for, whether you can buy into early second round or something like that.
Mhm.
Just maybe go. What I want, Vinay, is as many like strikes at this, you know what I mean, as
Yeah. Absolutely.
possible. And so the position of need is so clear and so loud that just you gotta hit on this in some way.
Mhm.
Hopefully, also you trade for the correct player, but the minimums and the taxpayer MLE and whoever you draft hopefully gives you an opportunity there. Funny enough, when you go on like Spotrac, one of their top free agent centers is Christian Coloco, who's who's on their
Your
team. So
guy Christian Coloco.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Dalton posted a picture, I think, of him working out with Trey and Christian Coloco. And then for a
yes,
second, I was just like, why are you three working out together? I was confused. I was like, I don't know what workout you guys have overlapping. One last question, Raj, before we go and we hit some of the questions from the chat.
yeah,
I am of the mind that you do have to have a balance of vets and young guys. Young guys, majority of the time, you want them to kind of do the dirty work, the grunt work, that sort of stuff. And the vets are the guys you want to be sort of the stabilizing forces. So every
mm,
team has like these anchor points. Positionally, there's anchor points, right? And the point guard is I've always, historically, the way I've thought about basketball, I've always thought the point guard in the center, no matter how dynamic or non-dynamic they are anchor points for the team because the center functions as the defensive quarterback and then the point guard is the offensive quarterback, regardless of what their skill levels may be. When it comes to the center that we have, the center that we try to go get, I do think the thing that I waffle with a little bit is if that guy should be a young guy like Derek Lively, or if that guy has
mm,
to be a veteran. You still have to be able to do the job. So I'm not saying
sure,
that the vet versus rookie thing is the delineating line. I think you still have to have IQ. But sometimes I do think to myself that maybe it has to be somebody who has some years. So it can't be somebody as young as Derek Lively. Can't be somebody as old as Clint Capella. I'm going to give you a name. I'm not saying we should trade for him. I'm just going to give you a
okay,
name. If it's DeAndre Ayton, who's the center, okay, let's ignore his number. Ignore the number he has. I know you
okay,
and I we don't have to discuss it. We have qualms. We have real question marks about his motor and stuff like that. I'm
yeah,
just asking the question. If DeAndre Ayton is the guy that ends up being the starting center for the Lakers, is he a balance of those two things? Because he's played deep in the playoffs before. He's
yeah,
played with that pick and roll. You have to screen every single time, blah, 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 follow the instructions, all that sort of stuff. And he's also not so young that he requires like a heavy amount of coaching.
mm,
If it ends up being DeAndre Ayton as a starting center for the Lakers, what do you think the Lakers, how do you think the Lakers fare
yeah.
with him at center?
Well, it's funny because this conversation has nothing to do with DeAndre Ayton's talent,
Absolutely
right?
not. Yeah.
His skill, like what he's capable of, like that. Like I'm not compare directly, but like you look at Jackson Hayes. It's like Jackson Hayes just can't He's just the talent just is not what DeAndre Ayton is. Ayton is an amazing post scorer. When he wants to be, he can protect the rim. He can really understand defensive coverages. You said that he does not have to be coached as much, and then I would push a little bit. I think Ayton would have to be pushed hard in different areas, not basketball sense, but in a motivating factor. And I know you said ignore the number, but just that investment would
It's 35 million. It's a lot.
yeah, it would very much concern me. But from a talent standpoint, like there's not many centers you can go get that would fit just in terms of a talent standpoint. Like if DeAndre Ayton was making Steven Adams money, I think like that's a hell of an investment to go grab and take the risk for. But yeah, I would struggle with it, and just what he's shown that he's good at now today. I just don't think fit what the Lakers need. I need a defensive kind of centerpiece, a guy who's really going to lead the charge defensively, and just simplified role on offense. And to me, none of that describes DeAndre Ayton, whether in Portland or anywhere.
So I lied. I have one more question for you.
All right.
If you had to choose between DeAndre Ayton and Rob Williams, and they had the same exact number cost, their salary number, sorry, not how much it costs to get them, but the same salary, $20 million. We'll just make a number up. Who would you want?
I'd probably go Rob. I think I'd bet on the injury. Like, obviously, you never want to bet on injuries, but I feel like there's at least something. And Rob is an elite. Like, he's elite at exactly what you want, right? People, I mean, he's traded for Drew Holiday. That gets lost within this, because of where Drew Holiday ended up. But just in any case, I think Rob would fit a lot better. And so I'd rather have Rob, but I understand people who still believe in DeAndre Ayton. He's 24, 25. He can't be that old. He's still probably 24, 25, whatever he is. But yeah, I've a lot of concerns.
We won't do it on this stream, Raj, but this is a very fun debate, because if we expanded this conversation and we said, let's say we turn injuries off for both of those guys, right? Let's say we turn injuries off for Rob. I feel like you would say overwhelmingly that Rob Williams is the guy that you would go after if it's at the same cost and you don't have the injury concern, right?
Yeah.
But I would make the argument, because I want, like, just for the sake of being devil's advocate, I would make the argument that it's easier to play Rob Williams off the floor than it is to play DeAndre Ayton off the floor, especially in the playoffs. So we don't have to get into that now, but I think that is a very fascinating thing to think about. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, man, if DeAndre wasn't making $35 million a year, and if he was making like $25 million a year, I think I could take the risk of like seeing what he looks like next to a guy like Luka Doncic, who's like he was doing with Chris Paul. I was like, I can only imagine how good he would be with, if his motor's there and stuff like that. But anyways, we don't have to discuss that. Raj, let's hit a couple. Let's rapid fire through some of these questions in the chat. We got a question from George, one of the original OG members of the Detailers Club, which is a way for folks to be able to support the YouTube channel. You can just go to YouTube and you could support us monthly, and get access to the Discord. You get the access to the Discord regardless, but you can help support the pod, and Raj and I always appreciate it. George has a question. His question is related to the finals, which is, and this is a deep question, so we might not be able to get too deep into it from the time constraint, which is, how much egalitarian versus heliocentric do you want the Lakers to be? Going all into one side will always have its drawbacks.
Oof. This is heavy, because we were arguing about this on
I was just gonna say we literally argued about this last night.
And so my point with this is I don't know, if you go in the history just of the league, I can't really find a team that just won with a super heliocentric style where the ball is at the top of the key. And my point was, like, I don't think Shai's gets thrown in that bucket, but I don't really see him in that either. They're a lot more versatile than here's Shai 1-4 flat. It got taken, Vinay, as a Luka criticism, and I think it's just there's an involvement, there's an evolution that's necessary. I think Luka has shown that his play gets you to a standard baseline, and that baseline might even be the NBA Finals, right? But whether in the first round or the finals, you're gonna meet a team that can defend that at a baseline level to kind of hurt your offense. And so it's a tough thing to kind of go back and forth on, because I don't think it's black and white. It's not if you're a heliocentric player, you don't impact winning, or if your team is fully egalitarian, you're going to go to the NBA Finals. I think there's a line where you kind of need both. And I think even Indiana, you see it where late game, Vinay, as egalitarian as they are, what's their end of the game? What's their end of actions plays? Halliburton here's the ball,
Yep.
like go make shit happen. Siakam here's the ball, make shit happen. And so I think you got to have some level of both. And I think the Lakers, to kind of answer George's question, I think the Lakers were way too far on the Helio side last year, and I think they got to kind of move that a little bit more to the middle, especially to work on the 3 ball handlers they have. But where are you at with this?
Yeah, I think that's JJ Redick's how to figure this out. Like, I think there are times where heliocentric ball makes a lot of sense when Luka's on fire and he can't miss. Then everybody's got to start ball watching him and let him do his thing. But when it's not cooking and he's not hitting, or he's taking really bad shots, or not generating the advantages that we'd like to see out of him, JJ has to pivot very quickly. I think that's an issue that Dallas has had for a long time, even with Luka there. I think that's why Rick Carlisle probably is no longer with Dallas. I think that's why Jason Kidd is with Dallas, because he kind of allowed Luka to do what he wanted to do when he was getting hot. But I think that's also the reason why Kyrie Irving was such a great partner for Luka, because he can go 20 minutes without touching a ball, and then all of a sudden you get a Kyrie crazy scoring barrage, because he's just a super gifted basketball player scoring wise. So I don't know how you find that balance, George, but I think that's what JJ has to figure out, how that's going to look, and whether Luka's even capable of doing that. We have one more question from Brandon. How would you feel if your off season was trading for Daniel Gafford, getting Clint Capella as your taxpayer MLE, and then getting guys like Anthony Melton and Amir Coffey or Amir Coffey on veteran minimums?
I like that package. All that, Vinay, I'm guessing shouldn't cost you your first rounder. I'm assuming
it shouldn't cost you anything. Gafford's the only guy you'd have to trade for. So as long as you're not giving up first, I think we've basically kind of openly said out loud that even though Dallas did trade, whatever the optics were of the Dallas trade with the Lakers and how Nico Harrison looks, I think Nico Harrison feels comfortable enough to call Rob Pelinka and be like, hey, this team, we're trying to make this trade. This team doesn't want Daniel Gafford. Do you guys want him? And Rob will be like, oh, yeah, sure. We'll take him. And what does the other team want?
Yeah, that's probably the way that Gafford would have to get here. I can't imagine, even with, I'm sure Nico gives zero crap, but I think Nico's also not the only one in that room. And also Nico's not signing his own checks. So there's someone above him that's also signing paychecks, and that guy 100% cares. So Lakers and Mavs can't do a one-on-one trade. Where the Lakers basically get another productive player for scrap heaps. Not the Lakers would give scrap heaps, but in any case, I think that's fine. I think that's that feels very Rob move-ish, where let's kick this can to one more transaction window. I've been pretty clear that Rob likes to work at the deadline. So very much just in the pressure of the deadline, and I think there's a little bit more activity there sometimes, and so I can see him kind of waiting to push all the chips into the table for whatever they need. But I think that's a fine summer. That probably doesn't put you where Laker fans want to put you, right? But you just hope that the regular season, Luka and LeBron and Austin and the team kind of hold fort until you make your real acquisition at the deadline. But again, like even in that deal, Capella at the taxpayer is kind of just thrown in there as
a guarantee.
That's the talent that you'd get there, and I'm not sure if it ain't. Again, the Adams deal kind of changes how I view the center market, because Capella probably feel like if I'm Capella's agent, I'm 30 years old. I averaged, what he averaged a year ago, like 13 and 5, whatever it is. Whatever he averaged. Steven Adams averaged 4 points and 4 rebounds last year, and just got a $11 million deal, whatever it is. If I'm Capella's agent, there's no way I'm going and just accepting a taxpayer MLE. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
And there might just be a better market for Clint Capella than we realized. Andre Drummond was still getting $5 million. Like, he signed a free agent contract for like $5 million a year, and he got 2 years and a player option or something like that. So I think the centers, backup centers, especially veteran ones that you can like rely on in a pinch when somebody gets hurt, they are still very valuable in the league.
Yeah.
To some degree.
But yeah, before we sign off, and
Yes.
just give me 2 minutes on Kevin Durant. Obviously has broken down his preferred destinations, which now the news is coming out that his preferred destinations hold very little water in how Phoenix will operate, which again, it hasn't really been the case with star trades, but nonetheless, that's the reporting that's coming out. Just quick hitters on what you think about Houston. I believe Houston and San Antonio are his preferred, if I have that correct.
Okay, so I'm some of this is stuff I know. Some of this is me guessing, speculative. So I won't tell you what is what. I don't think San Antonio is a real destination. I don't think he wants to go to San Antonio. I think the reason why San Antonio is getting mentioned is because they're the team that has like the most assets of all the teams that are available. So if you were trying to spread rumors of trying to get a really big package from the team that you actually want to trade him to, that he would actually also be okay with being traded to, you would want to use that team with the most assets and just make up stuff about how many picks that they're willing to offer. We've seen teams do this a lot. I think that's what's happening with San Antonio. San Antonio just got De'Aaron Fox for nothing, like pretty much nothing. And if Phoenix is trying to get rid of Kevin Durant, San Antonio's not a team that has to be like, they're not in a position where they're like, oh, we have to. Like, bro, they have like the second pick overall or something. Like they're going to get like a top
Darren
pick.
Harper, yeah.
Yeah, Dylan Harper or whoever they're going to get. So I was like, they're not in a position where they have to trade for Kevin Durant either, right? So there's no reason for them to do that. So I think what's happening is that San Antonio is getting thrown in there as a team that to build up other people's packages. I think the team that he probably does want it would be okay with going to is a team like Houston. There was rumors when he was in Brooklyn and Steve Nash got fired that they were pushing for Ime Udoka to be the guy who got hired, but Ime had gotten let go by Boston because of the stuff with the front office management stuff that happened. And there was supposedly a push internally with Brooklyn to bring Ime on board, but the optics were really bad. The Kyrie thing was happening. It was not a time for that to happen. So I think he does like him. Ime is a player's coach. A lot of players like him. And so maybe they fit. So maybe I think Houston's a great destination for him. They need a guy who can score. I don't know what that package is going to look like, Raj. Like
Fred VanVleet or Jalen Green.
Like if you do Jalen Green, like if Jalen Green's outgoing, I think that's okay. But I'm a little getting like I get a little worried when it's like they're like, no, they're not going to trade Jalen Green. They're going to keep him. I was like, well, how is Jalen Green and Kevin Durant going to work now? Not that they can't work together, but more like, is Jalen Green the guy that you want to have the volume score that Kevin Durant is playing off of, or is it opportunity? I don't know. I personally, selfishly, would like him to the Lakers, but obviously that's not reasonable. But the team, if I had to pick a team that he should go to, where I think the basketball fit would be really great for him. I don't know if the lifestyle fit would be great for him, but a basketball fit is the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think they're a team that could really, really do. He can play off of Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is more than happy to be the guy who's in front of the camera and taking high volumes of shots, and Kev can just do what he does, which he's amazing at, which is scoring the basketball without touching it. You got a guy, Jaden McDaniels, who probably still will end up there post-trade, that can, help defensively and stuff like that. And I think basketball fit wise, that makes a lot of sense. I see Miami getting mentioned in the chat. I'm just gonna say this, bro. Miami, for the folks who want Miami had their chance, man. They could have done it. Like, don't be mad at Kevin Durant. You guys need to be mad at Mickey Harrison and Pat Riley as to why he's not in a Heat jersey right now. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah. They had that same package, and I wouldn't really like Miami. I feel like that's not a great basketball fit. I would understand the lifestyle fit.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So the only thing I'll add to this conversation, Vinay, is that I think what gets ignored in this whole thing, and it's understandable why it gets ignored, but what the hell does Phoenix want? Like what? Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? So you mentioned Jalen Green from a Houston side. I think of it from a Phoenix side. Why would I want Jalen Green as my backcourt partner? And again, to your point earlier when we were speaking on of Memphis, does Phoenix just blow? Do they want to blow it up? Right, that's another thing. I think they just gave Devin Booker the super crazy max, and Devin Booker trades are starting to float out there as well, starting to get into the universe. But it's super interesting. I like Kevin in Minnesota. I think that makes the most basketball fit, but was not named at all. you're saying the Spurs one is probably not real, and that doesn't make a lot of sense either. I can't see the Spurs going and trading real stuff for KD. Doesn't match their timeline. They didn't even get I think they got half a season of Fox and Wemby, didn't get a real look at it, or not even that, right? Because I think Wemby went out with the injury.
It's also a weird thing because it's like Wemby's going to play the 4, but at the end of games he's going to play 5. But he's more of a perimeter oriented guy. So what do you do when you have 2 guys that are very heavily perimeter oriented?
Yeah,
like when it's Luka and Bron, Luka can be perimeter oriented and Bron can still post up, and vice versa. But when you do it with a guy like Kevin Durant, he's more perimeter jump shot oriented. He's not a go to the rim guy. So it's just at least this stage of his career.
Yeah. I think Houston makes the most sense just from a basketball fit, lifestyle fit. I think it's a place that Kevin Durant I think would like to play. Ime seems like
went
the
to
right
college
coach.
in Texas,
college in Texas, right? Little Texas, relationship there, but that makes the most sense. I have no idea where he's gonna go. It's just fascinating to me. Even we've already passed the lying phase, where usually the encumbered team usually is like, oh, we're gonna try to make it work with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Like we're gonna try to build around KD and Book and build a team that makes sense.
Yeah.
We have a new coach in Jordan Ott, who you get those reports where it's like Jordan Ott spoke to KD, they had a great conversation.
Oh yeah.
And so we're gonna check, even if none of that's true. You usually get that, but no, we've skipped all of that. We passed that point. We're already getting KD's destinations. We're getting trades. We're getting teams who are aggressive. The Toronto Raptors, Vinay, are thrown in here. I have no idea what Masai is building. He's the only one that I think knows, but I really don't understand what's going on over there. They got Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel quickly, and somehow are angling in Kevin Durant trades. But I just thought that was interesting. That was also the big news over the weekend before we get to a game 5 tomorrow.
Game 5. Yeah. We didn't even talk about OKC Indiana. That's been a great series. A lot of people, I don't care. Like we said, we don't really care about the ratings. We're going to watch the basketball anyways. So it's been really great basketball to watch. It's great to see those games go down in the fourth quarter and just come down to who's going to make the shots, who's going to give you the best chance to win. So it's been very, very cool to see that happen. Raj, I think we've hit everything that we wanted to hit today. We talked Adams, we talked Bane, we talked Kev, we talked Lakers basketball, all in between all of that. I would like to say one last thing, very last thing. I promise everybody, one last thing. I appreciate all the folks that have now made Andrew Wiggins like a daily conversation for on Lakers Twitter. I appreciate that. I would also appreciate it, just me personally. This is not Raj. This is just me. I would also appreciate it that if the people who take that idea and run with it would give us a little bit of credit for the idea. I know we've talked about Andrew Wiggins pretty extensively here, and we've talked about it with the Coaches Den guys pretty extensively. And I love the fact that like media members and stuff like that are talking about it, but we know where those ideas come from. And so it would be really cool if every now and then, if you guys have to hear these cool ideas, you'd be like, oh, I heard on Lakers Detailed, Vinay mentioned this guy or Raj mentioned that. It goes a long way, believe it or not. And it does give us an opportunity to kind of expand on some of the things, the ideas that we have. But I do like that we have a little bit of influence in terms of like where the conversation goes when it comes to it. But as always, folks, whether you joined us here at the start, came in the middle, you can replay this back on YouTube. I will get this up on Spotify and Apple for you guys too as well. We appreciate you. All of the support that we get, whether it's like, share, subscribe, we enjoy it. And we appreciate it sincerely. Sunday nights seems to be a great night to talk about Lakers basketball because a lot of people show up for these conversations. Yeah. So we really appreciate the folks that show up on these Sunday evenings. And if you're on X or somewhere else watching us, if you can head over to YouTube and subscribe and hit the like, leave a comment, whatever it is, we appreciate it. Helps with whatever their algorithm is on the back end. But as always, we appreciate you. Again, we want to wish everybody, all the dads, a happy Father's Day out there in Lakers Nation. We appreciate you guys. And we hope you have a wonderful weekend whenever you end up listening to this. And if nothing else, we'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.
Peace.